Prologue. They say a woman knows. Not all at once. Not like in the movies where the truth crashes in with a single dramatic scene and everything makes sense in an instant. No. In real life, a woman knows the way a house knows it's rotting. Slowly, from the inside, one small thing at a time. A text message laughed off, a scent on a collar that isn't hers, a ring that never quite fits no matter how many times she tells herself it's fine. Alara Voss knew. She'd known for months, maybe longer, in the place where instinct lives and the conscious mind refuses to visit. She'd known every time Marcus came home late smelling of a perfume she didn't wear. She'd known every time Camille, her best friend, her maid of honor, her person, canceled plans at the last minute with excuses that were just a little too elaborate to be true. She'd known, and she'd done what she always did. She swallowed it, filed it away, told herself she was being paranoid, being dramatic, being the kind of woman who ruins good things by looking too closely. And that right there is the thing nobody warns you about betrayal. It doesn't start with a single devastating moment. It starts with 100 tiny negotiations you make with yourself, each one so small you barely notice. You trade a little bit of your instinct for a little bit of peace. You file away one red flag, then another, until you've built an entire filing cabinet of things you've chosen not to see. And by the time the truth arrives, you realize you weren't blindsided at all. You were just finally too tired to keep your eyes shut. But fate has a way of forcing your eyes open. Because in 3 hours, Alara Voss will walk into a bridal shop in Ashford, Vermont, try on her wedding dress for the final fitting, and discover that her fiancé has been rehearsing their ceremony with someone else. And by midnight tonight, soaked in snow and half dead from cold in a forest she doesn't recognize, she will meet something that is not entirely a man, with eyes that burn like blue fire. And she will realize that the pain of betrayal was nothing, compared to the exquisite, terrifying, all-consuming danger of being wanted by something that isn't human. Chapter 1. Alara. If I could have everyone's attention, Marcus says, raising his glass. No, that's wrong. That was last week at the rehearsal dinner. Alara keeps mixing up the timeline lately. Everything bleeds together. The toasts, the tastings, the seating charts, the smile she's worn so long her face has forgotten how to not smile. Let me start over. 3 weeks before the wedding. December in Vermont. Alara is in her basement workshop piecing together a stained glass window from a church that's about to be demolished. St. Bridget's. Tiny congregation, beautiful bones, condemned by a town council that sees dollar signs where Alara sees 140 years of light passing through hand-cut glass. Her hands are steady on the cobalt blue shard. They're always steady when she works. It's the only time they are. Her phone buzzes. Dad. Ellie, how's the window? Cracked the amber piece yesterday. Had to recut. Amber's unforgiving. Your mother always said amber glass had opinions. Alara smiles. She can hear the tick of a dozen clocks behind her father's voice, the perpetual soundtrack of Henrik Voss's watch repair shop, where time is measured out in tiny mechanical heartbeats. She can also hear something she pretends she doesn't. The tremor in his voice, the slight slur that wasn't there 6 months ago. Henrik hasn't told her about the shaking in his hands. Alara hasn't told him she's noticed. Dad, I need to head out. Final fitting. A pause. The kind of pause that precedes the questions he actually wants to ask. Ellie, are you happy? Not the kind of happy you think you're supposed to feel. The real kind. The kind that makes you laugh for no reason. Now pay attention to what happens next. Because this is the moment that tells you everything about who Alara Voss is, and everything about the trap she's built for herself. Alara's chest tightens. She pushes the engagement ring against the workbench until the diamond bites her skin. Princess cut. White gold. Half a size too small. She's meant to get it resized for 11 months. Somehow the right moment never comes. Of course I am, Dad. The lie slides out so smoothly she almost believes it herself. Almost. That ring is going to matter later in this story. Not because of what it's worth, but because of what it represents. 11 months of wearing something that doesn't fit and calling it fine. 11 months of choosing a small daily pain over the larger pain of admitting something is wrong. That's not just a ring, that's a relationship. That's a whole life philosophy compressed into a half-size too small band of white gold. All right, sweetheart, Call me after. She hangs up. Stares at the blue glass shard on the bench, throwing its little ghost of light across the wall. Something's wrong with me, she thinks. Something's been wrong for a long time. She pushes the thought down, grabs her coat, heads for the door. Chapter 2. Alara Meridian Bridal sits between a pharmacy and a bakery that makes croissants so buttery you can smell them from the parking lot. The shop is all cream walls and soft lighting and hushed reverence, like a church for people who worship Tool. Camille texts. Running late, tasting emergency at the caterer. There in 30s Oxo. Alara doesn't hate her for it. She's never been able to hate Camille. College roommate, maid of honor, the woman who shows up when everything falls apart, usually with wine and a story about why she's late. That's so ridiculous, it diffuses whatever crisis prompted the call. So Alara tries on the dress alone. June, the consultant, reading glasses on a chain, 10,000 brides zipped into 10,000 dresses, helps her into the gown. Ivory silk, vintage lace at the shoulders, a neckline that took 4 consultations to get right. Absolutely stunning, June says, stepping back. Alara turns to the mirror. A bride looks back at her. Technically, the dress is beautiful. The lace lies perfectly against her collarbones. The silk catches light in that liquid way that makes every movement look cinematic. But the woman inside the dress isn't smiling. She's studying her own reflection, the way she studies cracked foundations and water-damaged beams. Looking for the fracture line. Looking for what's wrong. You should feel something, she tells herself. Joy, butterflies, something. All she feels is the ring pinching her finger. June gives her a moment alone. Alara presses her palm flat against the mirror and thinks, I look like someone wearing a costume for a role I didn't audition for. She steps out to find June. The main floor is empty. Voices drift from the back hallway. Laughter, muffled but familiar in a way that slows her steps. The VIP suite. Door ajar. Rose arch. Champagne bucket. Gold leaf mirror. And here it comes. The moment that shatters everything. In front of that mirror, wearing a wedding dress identical to Alara's. Same ivory silk, same vintage lace, a custom replica down to the pearl buttons at the wrists, stands Camille. Marcus's hands cradle Camille's face. His thumbs trace her cheekbones with a tenderness Alara hasn't seen directed at her in years. He kisses her like he used to kiss Alara before the engagement, before the planning, before everything became logistics and guest lists and table arrangements. He kisses her like he means it. Alara doesn't scream, doesn't cry. She stands in the hallway in her wedding dress and the strangest thought crosses her mind. So that's what it looks like when he means it. Now think about that for a second. She doesn't say, how could he? She doesn't say, I'm going to kill him. Her first thought is recognition. She's looking at the way Marcus kisses Camille and realizing she's never been kissed that way. Not by him. Maybe not by anyone. That's not just heartbreak. That's a woman finally seeing the shape of a hole that's been in her life so long she forgot it was there. But it gets worse. Not the kiss. She could have rationalized the kiss, but the dress. The identical dress. Someone commissioned a copy. Someone arranged a fitting at the same shop. This isn't a man having an affair. This is a man building a replacement. This is systematic. This is a business plan with a timeline and a budget and a dress fitting. Alara steps back into her fitting room, unzips the dress with steady hands, hangs it on the hook, pulls on her jeans, her sweater, her boots, buttons her mother's black wool coat, the one she inherited after the funeral, the one that still smells faintly of cedar and hand cream after 18 years. She walks out the back door without a word. The cold hits her like a slap. December in Vermont, sky the color of wet cement. She sits in her car. 1 breath. 3. She realizes she isn't going to cry. Not because she's strong, because somewhere deep inside in a place she's been afraid to look for years, she already knew. The ring that didn't fit, the kisses that felt like obligation, the late nights, the perfume. She'd known, she'd just chosen not to see. Snow begins to fall. Alara drives. Chapter 3. Alara. She doesn't decide to leave Ashford. Her hands simply turn the wheel north and she follows, the way you follow a current when you're too tired to swim. Highway gives way to county roads. County roads give way to forest tracks. Snow falls harder. The landscape goes blank, white on white, erasing the world she knew. Fitting, she thinks. The car handles the first hour fine. The second, pushes its luck. In the third, when the dashboard reads -12 and the light has drained from the sky, the tires lose their argument with the ice. The skid is almost gentle, a slow, inevitable slide on a curve she never sees coming. The car tips into the drainage ditch. Engine dies in a single gasp, silence. Just the tick of cooling metal and the whisper of snow against cracked glass. Phone, no signal. Temperature, dropping. Math, hypothermia in under an hour. Unconsciousness within 2. Dead by morning. And this is where the story takes a turn that nobody, least of all Alara, could have predicted. Alara pulls her mother's coat tighter and steps out. The cold is a living thing. It invades her lungs, turns every breath into violence. Snow past her ankles, roads stretching into darkness both ways without a single light. She walks. Not toward anything. Away from the car, which is already becoming a coffin. Movement is survival. Stillness is death. The forest closes around her. Enormous pines, branches heavy with snow, trunks darker than the darkness between them. Only faint slivers of moonlight pierce the canopy, casting strange, shifting patterns across the forest floor. The only sound is her breathing and the crunch of her boots through ice. 20 minutes. 30. Her feet go numb, then her hands, then the numbness creeps up her calves, colonizing her body with patient efficiency. This is how I die, she thinks, and the thought comes without fear. Just a quiet factual assessment, like reading a structural report on a condemned building. Foundation compromised, load-bearing walls failing, collapse imminent. A twig snaps. Alara freezes. She strains to listen over the pounding of her own heart. Another sound, a soft crunch of snow, closer. She whirls around. Nothing. Just trees and shadow and the relentless white of falling snow. The sensation of being watched grows stronger. The air itself feels charged. The hairs on her arms rise beneath her coat. Then she sees it. At first she thinks the snow is playing tricks, a white shape against white ground, barely there. But the shape moves, steps out from between two ancient pines with a silence that swallows sound rather than creates it. A wolf. But not any wolf she's ever seen. This creature is enormous, shoulder height level with her waist, body dense with muscle beneath fur so white it seems to glow. And its eyes. God, its eyes. Ice blue, burning in the darkness with an intelligence no animal should possess. Every survival instinct screams, run. But another part of her, the part that has swallowed every hurt, choked down every scream for 27 years, looks into those impossible blue eyes and feels something she hasn't felt in longer than she can remember. Safe. There's something fascinating happening here from a psychological perspective. Alara has just been betrayed by the person she trusted most. Her nervous system should be in full threat detection mode. Every stranger, every unfamiliar situation should trigger alarm bells. Instead, she looks at a wolf the size of a small horse, a literal apex predator, and feels safe. That's not irrationality. That's her instincts finally being allowed to speak after years of being silenced. Her conscious mind spent 11 months ignoring the red flags with Marcus. Now her subconscious is done being overruled. The wolf doesn't growl, doesn't bare its teeth. It stands 10 paces away, breath pluming, watching her with what she can only describe as recognition. As if it's been waiting for her. As if her arrival is not a surprise but a confirmation. Alara's legs give out. Not from fear, from everything. The cold, the exhaustion, the day that stripped her to nothing. She sinks into the snow and wraps her mother's coat around her body like armor against a war she's already lost. The wolf approaches. Slow steps, each paw placed with the precision of a predator choosing not to hunt. It stops beside her, not across from her, beside her, and lies down, pressing its massive body against her side. The warmth cuts through the cold like a blade through silk. Alara puts her hand on its fur, dense, impossibly soft beneath the outer layer, radiating heat that seeps through her frozen fingers into her blood. A sound deeper than a growl escapes the wolf. It vibrates under her palm. Not aggression, something else, something like relief. And Alara cries, not pretty tears. She cries the way buildings collapse all at once, from the foundation up, everything held together by sheer force of will finally giving way. She cries for Marcus and Camille and the wedding that was a lie. She cries for her father's trembling hands and her mother's empty coat. She cries for every time she said it's fine when it wasn't. Every time she adjusted herself to fit a space that wasn't made for her. The wolf doesn't move. It presses closer, warmth steady, and something in its stillness says, I know. I'm here. When the crying stops, not because the grief is finished, but because her body runs out of fuel, she realizes she can't feel her feet. The wolf rises, looks at her, then at the darkness between the trees, then back. The gesture is unmistakable. Follow me. You want me to go with you, she whispers. The wolf takes 3 steps and looks back over its shoulder with what she could swear is impatience. I've officially lost my mind, she mutters. But she gets up, because the alternative is dying in the snow. And somewhere between the crying and the warmth and the impossible recognition in those blue eyes, she's decided, for the first time in her life, that she isn't ready to give up. She follows the wolf into the dark. Chapter 4, The Wolf. Now here's where I need you to pay close attention. Because what you're about to hear is the same moment we just lived through with Alara, but from inside the mind of something that is not human. And the difference between these 2 perspectives is what makes this story so much more dangerous than a simple romance. The wolf moves through the forest with the female behind him, and every instinct in his body burns. Hunger. This human, this female, with fear scent rolling off her skin, salt tears freezing on her cheeks, heart hammering so loud he can hear it over the wind. She is small and fragile and half frozen, and she followed him without hesitation, and something about that makes his blood sing in a way he has never known. Mine. The word pulses through the wolf. Not a thought, wolves don't think in words. More like gravity. A reorientation of every cell toward a single fixed point. She is that point. Has been since her scent hit him on the wind. Wild honey, cedar, salt tears, and beneath it all something ancient and specific. Something coated in blood and bone that says, this one. Only this one. Always this one. He slows his pace, she stumbles. He slows further, patient. A predator's patience. No, not a predator, not with her, something else. Something the wolf has no word for. He leads her to the cabin, shifts at the door, the change ripping through him, bones cracking, muscles tearing, fur melting into skin. It hurts. It always hurts. He barely feels it. He carries her inside. She's unconscious by then, her body surrendering to cold. He builds a fire with shaking human hands, wraps her in blankets, sits in the chair and watches her breathe and fights, with everything he is, the urge to crawl into the bed beside her and bury his face in her hair and breathe her in until the line between his scent and hers disappears entirely. The human half says, wait, she's hurt, she's frightened, she doesn't know what you are. The wolf half says, she's mine. Both halves say, don't let her die. He sits, he watches, he waits. Chapter 5. Alara warmth. Real warmth, the kind that comes from stone walls and fire and air that's been heated long enough to settle into the bones of a building. Alara opens her eyes. A cabin, timber and stone, hand-hewn beams, mortise and tenon joints, not a nail visible in the ceiling. Fire burning in a stone hearth. And a man in the chair beside it watching her. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, dark hair fallen across his forehead. One hand wrapped in a bandage spotted with fresh blood. Bare feet despite the cold floor. A scratch across his collarbone, fresh, like he'd recently been something else, and the transition had cost him. But his eyes, amber. Not brown, not hazel, amber, like the resin her mother used to polish. And behind the color, the same look, the same knowing, measured, patient awareness she saw in the wolf. Same soul. Different skin. You nearly froze to death out there, the man says. Low voice, rough, like he doesn't use it often. I'm Ronan. The wolf, Alara says, not a question. Ronan doesn't flinch, doesn't deny, just holds her gaze with those impossible eyes and says nothing, which is answer enough. White wolf, enormous, led me here. Now it's gone, and you're sitting there with a bandaged hand and eyes that look at me the same way it did. Silence. The fire pops, wind presses the windows. You should rest. Ronan says, I don't need rest, I need answers. Something shifts in his face, not quite a smile, but the ghost of one. Like he isn't used to being challenged and finds it interesting. Fair enough. But the answers are the kind that require a functioning brain, and you've been unconscious for 6 hours with a body temperature that should have killed you. Try me. He studies her. She studies him back. And despite everything, despite the wreckage of her life, the impossibility of what she's seen, she feels something she hasn't felt in longer than she can remember. Alive. She feels absolutely, dangerously alive. Chapter 6. Alara. She stays 3 days. She means to stay 1 night, but the building catches her. Not the cabin, a larger structure nearby. 3 stories, timber and stone, old in a way that makes her professional instincts stutter. One entire corner of the upper floor has collapsed, beams splintered and hanging at angles that make her wince. Storm damage. Recent. Ronan is trying to repair it alone. She watches for 30 seconds. You're doing it wrong. He turns. In daylight, without firelight softening his features, his face is harder. Late 20s, maybe 30. Handsome in the way certain old buildings are, not because they're perfect, but because their imperfections tell a story. Excuse me? That beam. You're forcing it at an angle that fights the existing load. The joists above are settling northeast. See the wider gap on that side? Cut the tenon to match the settle, not the original spec. Otherwise, the whole thing torques under snow, and you lose that corner again by next winter. She points out 3 stress fractures. Ronan follows her finger, jaw tightening. Long silence. No one from outside stays at Black Pine Ridge past 1 night, he says. Then you'll fix this alone with the wrong technique, and it'll collapse in the next storm, and whatever this building means to whoever built it will be gone forever. A long moment. He sets down his tools. Show me. 2 words, show me. Remember those, because they're gonna matter later. They work. Alara teaches him to read wood grain for hidden weaknesses. He shows her the marks on the main column, dozens of them, children's heights scored into wood with dates beside them. Generations of gray-marked children, measured against this post. My sister Nessa insisted on being measured standing on a stool, Ronan says, fingers tracing a mark near his shoulder height. Thought if she cheated, she'd actually grow taller. His voice softens when he talks about Nessa. Alara stores this. A man who goes soft talking about his little sister is a man whose hardness is armor, not nature. She notices impossible things. Ronan never uses a flashlight, even working in the windowless cellar at dusk. He hears a squirrel on a branch 50 meters away, and when a massive crossbeam cracks without warning and drops toward them, 200 pounds of old-growth pine, Ronan catches it. 1 hand, like it weighs nothing. He sees her staring, sets it down with exaggerated care. She doesn't say anything, but she doesn't look away. Nessa arrives on the 3rd morning. 15. Small, sharp-eyed, ink-stained fingers, charcoal dust on her left cheek. She drops onto a bench with the absolute confidence of someone who belongs everywhere. So you're the one my brother dragged out of the snow. He didn't mention you were pretty. Nessa, Ronan warns. What? You didn't. She turns to Alara with a conspiratorial grin. He also didn't mention he can't fix a mortise joint to save his life. Despite everything, Alara laughs, a real laugh, surprised out of her, and the sound startles everyone in the room, including herself. That evening, on the porch, mugs of tea brewed strong enough to stand a spoon in, Nessa says something that changes everything. My brother's running out of time. If you knew what he really was, you'd run. She pauses, but I hope you don't. Chapter 7. Alara, the 3rd night. A howl wakes her, rising from beyond the clearing, climbing into the frozen sky with a loneliness so pure it bypasses her ears and lands in her chest. Alara goes to the window. Moonlight floods the world, turning snow into mirrors and trees into black lace. Ronan stands in the clearing. And then he changes. It isn't violent, it isn't the grotesque bone-snapping of horror movies. It's slow, agonizing, and the loneliest thing Alara has ever seen. His body doesn't break, it dissolves, 1 layer revealing another beneath, like stripping paint from an antique surface to find the original wood. Skin shifts, spine curves, human edges soften into something older, wilder. When it's over, the white wolf stands where Ronan was. It raises its head and howls, and snow shakes from the nearest branches. Alara grips the windowsill, heart hammering, feet planted. She doesn't run. The wolf turns and looks directly at her window. Those ice-blue eyes, different color from the amber but the same soul burning behind them, find hers through the glass. Now you know, those eyes say. Alara raises her hand and presses her palm to the glass. The wolf holds her gaze, then turns and vanishes into the trees. She doesn't sleep. Chapter 8. Ronan. She's on the porch at dawn, 2 mugs of tea cooling beside her. She's made one for him. The small kindness of it nearly undoes him more than the transformation did. Sit down, she says. Tell me everything. So he does. The Greymark bloodline. Lichen. Not the Hollywood version, not monsters, but an ancient lineage where wolf and human exist as two halves of a single being. The curse that runs through every alpha. If he doesn't find his fated mate before 33, the human half disappears. Not death. Worse, you're trapped forever in wolf form. Still conscious, still aware, still yourself, but you can never speak again, never touch anyone with human hands, never be anything but the animal. Your father, Alara says quietly. Ronan's jaw clenches. There's an old wolf in the deep forest, gray. Nearly blind, he comes to the edge of the clearing sometimes and stares at the house, at the windows. Let that image sit with you for a moment. A father trapped inside an animal's body, with a human mind still intact, standing outside his own house, watching his children through windows he can never open. Still there, still aware, just unable to reach them. That's not a curse. That's a prison designed by someone who understood that the worst punishment isn't death, it's proximity without contact. How long do you have? 11 months. And me, what am I to you? This is the question he's dreaded. Not because he doesn't know the answer, but because the answer carries a weight no honest person would put on someone they've known for 3 days. The wolf recognized you. The moment I found your scent in the forest, everything in me, blood, bones, the part that isn't human, knew. You're my fated mate. He waits for her to recoil. Instead, if you knew, why didn't you tell me? Because you'd just been betrayed by a man who treated you like a possession. And the last thing you needed was someone else telling you, destiny says you belong to him. And this is where Ronan becomes something rare in stories like this. He's a man staring down the permanent loss of his humanity. He has 11 months before he's trapped as an animal forever. The woman in front of him is literally the only person who can save him. And instead of telling her that, instead of leveraging her guilt or her empathy or her natural instinct to help, he says nothing. Because he believes her freedom matters more than his survival. Compare that to Marcus, who proposed to Alara not out of love but to keep her quiet while his family bought up her father's street. One man uses a relationship as a cage. The other refuses to build one, even to save his own life. Silence, the morning cold, the smell of pine and snow. Alara stares at him with an expression he can't read. You're dying, she says. Your humanity is what's at stake. And you chose not to tell me because you thought I deserved to choose? Because you're not a key to my curse, you're a person, and people get to choose. Something cracks in her composure, her eyes glisten. She stands and walks to the edge of the porch, looking out at the valley. I need to go back, she says, to Ashford. There are things I need to finish. The wolf inside him howls. I understand, Ronan says. I'm not running away. She turns to face him. I'm choosing to deal with what I left behind. There's a difference. Yes, he thinks, there is. And the fact that you know that difference is why the wolf chose you. Chapter 9. Alara. She drives back to Ashford. Marcus opens his apartment door in a bathrobe, coffee in hand, the casual ease of a man who hasn't expected accountability this early. Alara, where have you been? I've been calling. I saw you, Marcus. The ease curdles, at Meridian, with Camille, in the dress. She watches him cycle through options, deny, deflect, minimize, attack. She can see each strategy forming and being discarded. He chooses minimize. It's not what it looked like. It looked like you were kissing my best friend in a copy of my wedding dress 3 weeks before our wedding. What did I miss? He sets down the coffee. When he speaks again, the charm is gone. My father arranged everything. The wedding, the career, all of it. Camille was a mistake. But none of that changes the plan. The plan, Alara repeats. We can still make this work. We haven't been building anything, Marcus. You've been building. I've been standing in the foundation trying not to get poured over. She pulls the ring off. The relief is immediate. The pinch gone, the permanent indentation exposed to air for the first time in 11 months. She sets it on the counter. We're done. Camille appears in the bedroom doorway, wearing Marcus's shirt. She has the decency to look uncomfortable for 2 seconds before rearranging her face into pity. I'm sorry, Alara, but you have to admit, you were always the kind of woman men replace. Too sweet, too easy. Men don't want someone who bends to everything. They want someone who makes them feel alive. The words land. Alara lets them. Then she says, I'm not easy to replace, Camille. I'm easy to forgive. And those are 2 very different things. She walks out. She does not look back. Chapter 10. Alara. Judge Richard Trent calls that evening. Measured cadence, cold precision. A man who sees no difference between a courtroom and the rest of the world. If you embarrass my son publicly, Miss Voss, you should know your father's lease on his watch shop comes up for renewal next month. It would be a shame if the property management company decided not to extend it. The threat is so clean it almost sounds like concern. You're threatening my father's business? I'm describing possible outcomes. Wise people consider them before making irrevocable decisions. He hangs up. Now think about what just happened. A sitting judge just threatened to destroy a small business owner because his son got caught cheating. This isn't love. This isn't even family loyalty. This is what power looks like when it has no accountability. A phone call, a veiled threat, and the assumption that people like Alara and Henrik will do what they've always done, absorb the blow and stay quiet. Alara stands in her workshop, surrounded by fragments of St. Brigid's windows, and feels something she hasn't felt in years. Not sadness, not the accommodating resignation she's mistaken for maturity. Rage. They're going after her father. After the shop where Henrik has spent 40 years repairing watches with hands that are starting to betray him. She calls Henrik. Dad, how are your hands today? Surprised silence. They've been better. Why? I need to tell you something, and then I need to ask for your help. Chapter 11. Alara. She goes back to Black Pine Ridge. Not for Ronan, or so she tells herself. For the building, for the work, for the distance between Vermont and everything that's crumbling behind her. But when the truck crests the ridge and the valley opens below, white and vast, and Ronan steps onto the porch with sawdust in his hair and an expression trying very hard to be neutral and failing completely, she knows the building isn't the only reason. You're here, he says. Your ridge beam is still wrong, she says. He almost smiles. Cale finds her on the second day. Taller than Ronan, broader, with the dense build of someone who spends more time in wolf form than human. Beta of the pack. He wears authority like a coat he's outgrown. You need to leave. Alara, halfway through resetting a corner post, doesn't look up. I'm busy. Ronan's father brought a human woman here. She couldn't accept what he was. The bond failed. He went feral. 3 people died. Now she looks up. Cale's face holds no malice, just hard certainty learned in blood. I'm not the woman who came before me, Alara says. The right of fire and frost, Cale says to Ronan, who's appeared in the doorway. Pack law. A human proves they're not a liability. One night in the forest. No fire, no weapons. No, Ronan says. I'll do it, Alara says. Both men look at her. You don't have to, Ronan says. I know. That's why I want to. Because for the first time in her life, she wants to prove something for herself. Not for Marcus, not for Camille, not for a world that expected her to bend. She wants to know what she's made of when nobody is watching. Chapter 12. Alara. The forest at night is nothing like the forest in daylight. Every shadow holds weight. Every sound arrives stripped of context, floating through frozen air like fragments of a language she doesn't speak. The cold is patient, finding every gap in her clothing, every exposed inch. She survives using everything her father taught her without knowing he was teaching her to survive. Wind direction, northeast. Keep it at her back. Water. Follow the stream by sound, not sight. Warmth. Birch bark inside her jacket as insulation, the way Henrik showed her on a camping trip when she was 11. 4 hours in, the cliff finds her. Frozen cascade over rock, looks solid under snow. Her foot punches through the crust and finds nothing. She slides. Fingers find rock, hold, slip. She's falling. A shape below, gray fur, not white. Smaller than Ronan's wolf. Older. Clouded eyes with a flicker of intelligence beneath cataracts. The old wolf braces at the base of the cliff, and her fall ends against his flank. Ronan's father. He looks at her. In his eyes, milky, failing but present, she sees something she recognizes. A father, watching out for someone. The way fathers do, even when the world has taken everything from them. Thank you, she whispers. The old wolf leads her to a shallow cave and lies across the entrance like a living door, body heat warming the space. Alara presses her back against stone and waits for dawn. The night stretches. 5 hours. 6. The temperature drops further. Her teeth chatter so hard she bites her tongue. Blood, warm and copper, fills her mouth. She thinks about Marcus, not with anger, with clarity. She sees their relationship the way she sees a compromised structure. Every crack, every load-bearing lie, every stress point she'd ignored because acknowledging them meant the whole thing would come down. He'd proposed at his father's country club. She'd said yes, wearing a dress Camille helped her pick. Camille, who'd been sleeping with Marcus for God knows how long. Had they laughed about it? Sat in bed afterward discussing how easy Alara was to manage, how reliably she swallowed her doubts, how perfectly she played the woman who never made waves? The ring that didn't fit. 11 months of tiny pain she'd trained herself to ignore. That was the whole relationship in miniature. Something beautiful and sharp that hurt her every day, and she'd lived with it because she thought that's what love required. She presses her forehead against her knees. The old wolf's breathing is steady at the cave entrance. Somewhere far away, another howl, not the old wolf. Higher, more urgent. Ronan, looking for her. I'm fine, she whispers to no one. Then she catches herself and almost laughs. Fine, the most dangerous word in her vocabulary. The word she's wallpapered over every crack in her life until the whole structure was more wallpaper than wall. Not anymore. She thinks about Ronan. The way he set down his tools when she pointed out his mistakes. The way he didn't argue, didn't get defensive, didn't tell her she was overreacting. He just said, show me. No man in her life has ever said, show me. They've said, let me handle it. They've said, don't worry about it. They've said it's fine the way it is, but never show me. And when he told her she was his fated mate, the one person who could save him from losing his humanity forever, he hadn't begged, hadn't manipulated, hadn't wrapped the truth in pretty paper to make it easier to swallow. He'd said, you're a person, and people get to choose. Marcus gave her a ring that didn't fit and called it love. Ronan gave her a choice and called it respect. Dawn finds her standing at the cave entrance, watching the sky turn from black to gray to the palest gold. The old wolf is gone. Her body aches in places she didn't know could ache. But she's alive, and she isn't pretending. Morning. She walks back to Black Pine Ridge. The entire pack is waiting. Cale stands at the front. She stays, he says. Her phone buzzes. Dad. Ellie. The lease. Trent's people sent the letter this morning. They're not renewing. A pause. Clock's ticking. Then softer. It's all right, sweetheart. I've been fixing watches my whole life. I know when it's time to stop. Alara stands in the clearing, surrounded by wolves and silence, and listens to her father lose his livelihood because she refused a man who didn't love her. The grief doesn't come. The anger does. Not the quiet resignation she's mistaken for patience her entire life. This is furnace hot, bone deep, the kind of anger that doesn't destroy but forges. The kind that turns raw material into something harder. For 27 years, Alara Voss has been fine. She's done being fine. Chapter 13. The Wolf. She left again. The wolf paces the tree line, muscles coiled, every nerve screaming. 3 days she was here. 3 days her scent saturated the cabin, the workshop, the porch where she drank her tea, the old house where she knelt in sawdust with her hands in the wood like a surgeon's hands in a patient. Now the scent is fading, cooling, dying. The wolf's claws rake deep gouges into the porch railing, wood splintering under savage pressure. Its breath comes in harsh pants, eyes burning through the darkness toward the road she drove away on. The human says, she'll come back. She promised. The wolf says, follow her, find her. She is ours. Claim her, mark her, end this waiting. The human says, she is not ours to claim. The wolf does not understand this concept. Ownership is simple. You find what is yours. You take it, you hold it, you destroy anything that threatens it. The other male, the one whose scent still clings faintly to her coat, the wrong male, the replacement, the wolf's lips peel back in a snarl that would send any creature fleeing. If the wolf ever finds that male, it will not be patient, it will not be kind. But the human holds firm. The human understands something the wolf does not or refuses to. That love demanded is not love at all. That a mate who comes to you out of obligation comes to you already half gone. The wolf lies on the porch where she sat, presses its muzzle to the wood that still holds her warmth, closes its eyes, waits. Chapter 14. Alara. She drives back to Ashford, armed, not with weapons, with records. County assessor files cross-referenced against the State Historic Preservation Database, architectural surveys, public records requests. Because Judge Trent isn't just punishing her for the broken engagement, He's clearing the way for a project that's been in motion since before Marcus ever put a ring on her finger. The entire block, Henrik's shop, Ren Holloway's bookstore, the bakery, the antique dealer, slated for demolition. Marcus's firm handling the acquisitions. The engagement wasn't love, it was risk management. Keep the restoration architect close, keep her quiet, keep her grateful. The ring was never meant to fit. She was never meant to be comfortable, just contained. And this is where the story reveals its deepest layer. Because this isn't just a romance about a woman choosing between two men. This is about something that happens every day in towns like Ashford. Generational wealth using legal machinery to acquire property from people who can't afford to fight back. The judge doesn't need to break laws, he just needs to not renew leases, rezone a street, and wait. And the engagement? The engagement was insurance. If Alara is family, she can't testify against the Trents. She can't file objections. She can't use her professional expertise to challenge the demolition plan. Marcus didn't put a ring on her finger, he put a muzzle on her. Marcus didn't just cheat. He ran a long con. Everything, the proposal, the ring, the wedding plans, was a cage built so gradually she'd mistaken the bars for architecture. Ren Holloway is 63, sharp as a litigator, with a bookstore that smells of old paper and strong opinions. I've been expecting someone to connect the dots, Ren says when Alara walks in with a folder of documents. Sit down. Coffee? Together they build a coalition. Every business owner on Merchant Street, every resident who's watched Ashford's historic district sold off to developers, every preservation statute, every zoning regulation that Alara's expertise tells her applies. The meeting takes place in Ren's back room. 8 business owners, 3 retired teachers, a city council member who's been quietly opposed but lacked ammunition. Alara presents her findings in the language she knows best, structural analysis. Foundation dates. Craftsmanship that qualifies half the block for state protection. Development plans, demolition timelines. They're not just buying buildings, she says, they're erasing a neighborhood. Henrik speaks from the back, trembling hands folded in his lap. My daughter is right. I didn't spend 40 years on this street to watch it disappear without a fight. Chapter 15. Alara Marcus finds her the next morning. Black BMW, polished fury. You filed a historic preservation petition. I did. My father will crush this. He'll try. He steps closer, close enough for cologne, the expensive one, the one she used to find sophisticated and now recognizes as costume. You're throwing away everything, Marcus says. Your career in this town, your reputation. My reputation, Alara almost laughs. What reputation? The accommodating fiancé? The woman too sweet to make a fuss? That reputation died in a bridal shop, Marcus. You killed it. His jaw works. She can see him recalculating, the way he recalculates in depositions when a witness says something unexpected. Pivot, redirect, regain control. We had something good, Alara. We had something convenient for you. I made one mistake. One? The dress, Marcus. You had someone make a copy of my wedding dress. That isn't a mistake. That's a business plan. That's what you do with something you're replacing. You build the new model before you retire the old one. Something shifts in his face. The charm drops completely, and for the first time, Alara sees the man underneath. Not cruel exactly, but utterly indifferent. Like she's a contract that didn't perform, a deal that fell through. Nothing personal. You knew about the development plan before you proposed to me, she says. Not a question. Marcus's jaw tightens. He doesn't answer. The silence is the loudest thing she's ever heard him say. You knew my survey would flag the historic buildings. You knew I could block the whole project. So you proposed. Kept me close. Kept me busy with seating charts and cake tastings while your firm bought up the block. Still nothing. She doesn't need a confession. His silence is one. Goodbye, Marcus. She climbs in her truck. In the rearview mirror, a man standing in the driveway with his hands in his pockets, looking exactly like what he is. Someone who lost control of a situation he assumed was permanently under management. Chapter 16. Nessa. The call comes at the worst possible time, the way emergencies always do. He shifted this morning, middle of the day. No warning, no moon. 8 hours and he can't come back. Nessa's voice cracks. The composure of a 15-year-old who's spent her life being braver than her age, fracturing at the seams. He still looks at me. He knows who I am, But every hour, there's less of him in those eyes, like watching a light go out, one room at a time. The curse. It's accelerating? I found something in the old markings on the ritual stones, the ones everyone forgot how to read except me. Nessa's voice drops. The curse doesn't break because the mate shows up. It breaks when she chooses the alpha. Not because of destiny, not because of the bond or obligation or pity. She has to choose him because she truly sees both halves, man and wolf, and accepts both without fear. A beat. Ronan's mother loved his father. But she never stopped being afraid of the wolf. She loved the man and feared the beast, and fear was a crack the curse lived in. And there it is, the twist that reframes the entire story. The curse isn't a lock that needs a key. It's a mirror. It reflects the truth of how you love someone. Ronan's mother loved half a man and feared the other half, and the curse counted that as incomplete. Not because magic is cruel, but because love that requires someone to hide a part of themselves isn't love. It's a more beautiful kind of cage. And Alara, who spent 11 months hiding her pain behind a ring that didn't fit, knows exactly what that kind of cage feels like. Alara closes her eyes. Understanding blooms like a bruise, slow, spreading, painful. That's why he never told me. He was afraid if I chose him out of guilt, the curse would know. Yes, Nessa is crying. Please come. I can't watch my brother disappear the way my father did. I can't. I'm coming. 4 hours. Highway and mountains and silence so thick it presses against her eardrums. Her mother's coat on the passenger seat like a companion. Chapter 17. Alara, she finds him in the clearing. The white wolf lies in the snow, massive and still. Snowflakes settle on his fur and don't melt. Body heat already diminishing, pulling inward, protecting whatever's left of the man inside. His eyes are open. Ice blue. Same eyes that found her in the blizzard. But the light behind them is fading. Not going dark, going distant, like a ship pulling away from shore. Still visible. No longer reachable. The pack gathers at the edges. Silent shapes and shadows. Keel nearest, arms crossed, granite expression, glistening eyes. Nessa on the porch steps, knees to chest, tears frozen on her cheeks. From the deep forest, the old wolf emerges. Gray, limping, half blind. He lies down a few yards away. He's come to watch his son follow him into the same prison. Alara walks past all of them. She sits down in the snow beside Ronan. The cold soaks through her jeans. She doesn't adjust. She puts her hand on his side. His fur is cool, not the warm, vibrant heat she remembers. Cooler now, fading. She doesn't make a speech. She doesn't swear an oath. She spent her entire life watching people fill silence with words they don't mean, and she is done with hollow ceremonies. She sits with him the way she sat with him the first night, in silence, in snow. Hand on his fur, eyes open. I'm not choosing you because you need me, she says, voice low, almost conversational. I'm not choosing you because of a curse or a bond or because fate says so. The wolf's breathing changes, faster, more present. I'm choosing you because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to pretend to be someone else. You didn't ask me to be quieter or easier or less opinionated about load-bearing walls. She leans forward, forehead against the fur between his ears. I'm not afraid of the wolf, Ronan. I see both halves, and I choose both. The forest holds its breath. On the porch, Nessa presses both hands over her mouth. The old wolf raises his head. Watching, the change comes slowly, not violent, quiet, intimate like dawn arriving. Fur recedes, body contracts, reforms, bones shift beneath her hand. The wolf's breathing becomes a man's, ragged, desperate, human. Ronan lies in the snow, naked and shaking, his hand gripping hers so tight his knuckles are white. The tension inside her unspools, the ache behind her eyes eases, the exhaustion in her limbs lifts. Something slots into place, not with a crash, but with a click, quiet and final, like a lock finding its key. You're crying, he says, voice destroyed. I know. She's smiling through it. This time I want to. Epilogue. 6 months later, Merchant Street is still standing. The preservation petition succeeded, not without a fight, but brick and stone and the careful documentation of a restoration architect proved harder to demolish than the Trent family expected. Henrik's watch shop is open. His hands tremble more now. Parkinson's, early stage, manageable. He's told Alara. She's told him she already knew. And now there's help. Nessa Greymark moved to Ashford with a single bag, ink-stained fingers, and a letter from Ronan. She's the smartest person I know. Don't let her convince you otherwise. Nessa has taken to watchmaking with the intensity she brings to everything. Total commitment, endless questions, and a precision that Henrik declares is either genius or evidence she was Swiss in a previous life. She also makes Henrik laugh. A sound Alara hasn't heard often enough since her mother died. "She's not replacing me, is she?" Alara asks once, half joking. "Nobody replaces you," Henrik says. "But it's nice to have someone who appreciates a properly calibrated escapement." Alara lives between two worlds now, weekdays in Ashford. Her workshop, her restorations, the 3 buildings on Merchant Street she's convinced the town to fund. Weekends in Montana, where the Greymark house stands tall and whole, timbers strengthened, foundations secured, 3 stories holding the weight of generations. On the main column, beside the height marks of every Greymark child for 200 years, a new mark has been carved. Not a measurement, a name. Ilara. "Why?" she'd asked, tracing the letters with her fingertips. "Because this house is alive," Ronan said. "And it should know who saved it." She'd looked at him then, this man who turned into a wolf under the full moon, who'd carried her out of a blizzard, who'd rather lose his humanity than take away her choice. This man who never once told her she was too much or not enough, who never asked her to be quieter or easier or different in any of the ways every man before him had. Marcus gave her a ring that didn't fit and called it love. Ronan carved her name into the bones of his family's home and called it truth. The curse isn't gone entirely. Every full moon, Ronan still shifts, still painful, still isolating. But now when the white wolf emerges from the tree line at dawn, there is someone on the porch who doesn't flinch. The old wolf still comes sometimes. On clear nights, his gray shape appears at the edge of the clearing. On those nights, Nessa walks to the tree line and sits in the snow and speaks to him in the old language she taught herself from marks on stone, the language the pack forgot, the language that says, "I see you. You are not forgotten." On a Saturday morning in June, the snow long melted, the valley green and loud with birdsong. Alara sits on the porch of the Greymark house. Her mother's black wool coat folded beside her, too warm for it now, but she never comes without it. A white wolf steps out of the morning mist. She doesn't stand. She doesn't call his name. She just moves over on the step, making room, the way you make room for someone who belongs beside you, and waits. Thank you for listening, everyone. If this story made you feel something, if Alara's journey stayed with you, then hit that like button and subscribe. New stories drop every week, each one deeper and more addictive than the last. Drop a comment telling me, would you have followed the wolf into the dark? See you in the next one.